Okay, today we're going to do 8M4 lesson 5. And this is a combination of stuff we've done in lesson 1 and 2, and along with 3 and 4, and combined with some building blocks from prior lessons. So this is writing and solving linear equations. So there's word problems, there's linear equations, and there's actually going to be a little geometry mixed in. So this is pretty exciting stuff. So let's get going with today's lesson. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the building blocks for today's lesson. So in lessons 1 and 2, we learned how to, write expressions and equations from English descriptions. So we had English descriptions, we wrote them in mathematical sentences, expressions and equations. In lesson 4, we learned how to solve equations, and specifically linear equations. And then in 8M2, parts of 8M2, we learned the rules. We learned the rules of triangles and other geometric relationships. Okay, so these are the things that we combine in lesson 5, and again, these are our building blocks, and we're going to learn to do we're going to learn power. We're going to take a big step up and combine what we've learned. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 examples directly from today's lesson. And these are all just like the homework. They're all like the homework. The homework doesn't really do anything terribly different. And then we're going to do 1 example like the hardest homework problem. Okay, so that'll be our homework. This is our homework help. But really, all 3 examples are homework help. So let's get going. 3 problems, and then that's what we're doing today. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first example. So this is from today's lesson. A pair of congruent angles are described as follows. Now, again, we have got to look and we got to really understand, congruent angles. The degree measure of one angle is 3 more than twice a number, and the other angle's measure is 5.54.5 less than 3 times the number. Determine the measure of the angles in degrees. So congruent angles. What are congruent angles? We have to remember. Congruent angles are angles with the same measure. They don't have to be in a triangle or anything. They're just 2 angles. So if I draw, angle, kind of angle 1, and I draw angle 2, this will be angle 1. Call this angle 1, and we'll call this angle 2. And we know that they are the same. These are the same measure because they are congruent. So we're just going to draw them out. Now the degree measure of one angle, so we're going to call this angle 1, is 3 more than twice a number. Okay? So a number, remember if we go back to lesson 1 and 2, when we hear the word a number, that's like a number that we don't know. So a number, we can just call it something. What do we do when we don't know the value of something? So we're going to say a number. What do we do? We're going to call that a variable because we're going to find this out. It's a puzzle. So we're going to call X a number. You could call it A or Q or whatever you want, but typically, algebra people, mathematicians like to use X for some reason to describe the unknown. So the degree measure of one angle is 3 more than twice the number. So let's think about that. The degree measure is, so angle 1 is 3 more than twice the number. Well, 3 more than twice the number is 3 more than twice the number. Now we learned this in lesson 1 and 2. I'm not going to go over exactly all the nuances of how you break down a sentence, but that's the key, is figuring that out. The other angle, we're going to call that angle 2. That's the measure. And the measure of angle 2 is equal to 54.5 less than 3 times the number. So if I say something is something less than 3 times the number, I take the number 3 times the number, and then I subtract 54.5. So now we have the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 2. And now we have to determine the measure of the angles in degrees. Well, this key first sentence has told us what? A pair of congruent angles. It says these are the same. So if angle 1 and angle 2 are the same, then I can say what? I can say that this and this must be the same. So I'm going to do my algebra. We'll do 3 plus 2x equals 3x minus 54.5. So let's combine, let's see. Oh, this is going to work out nicely. Let's get the x's onto one side. So what can we do to get rid of this 2x over here? Well, we can subtract 2x from both sides. And remember, this is our, subtraction property of equality. I can subtract the same value from both sides, and I still have a true equation. So I get 3 equals x minus 54.5. And now I can use the addition property. I'm going to give you the hint, the addition property of equality, and we'll be done. What are we going to add to both sides to solve this problem? For those of you who said 54.5, you are correct. So we have these cancel, and on the right side I have x, and on the left side I have 57.5. So that's my value of x. If I answered the question though, and the answer is no, I haven't solved the equation yet because I haven't determined the measure of angle 1. I know the measure of angle 1 is 3 plus 2x, and I know that x is 57.5. So now we can plug our x in and get our answer. 3 plus 2 times 57.5 equals, well, that's 57.5 times 2. If you do the math on that, that's 115 plus 3. So that's 118. Now, I'm hoping that this equals 118. I can, if I did all my math, it is, but let's just make sure. 3 times 57.5 minus 54.5. That better be equal to 118. So 3 times 57.5, if you do the math, that's 172.5 minus 54.5. And if you do that math, you come up with the correct answer of 118. So I found my 2 congruent angles. That was a lot. Now, this was quite a lot going on in this equation. So let's put some happy cats everywhere where we did some good work. What did we have to do here? Let's recount what we had to do. We had to understand the question. We had to draw a picture. We really had to draw a picture. We had to draw our two angles. We had to set up equations. or set up expressions. We had to write our expressions here. This is step 3. And then we had to write an equation. Right? We had to write our equation right here. 5, we had to solve the equation. Then we had to go back and we had to plug the answer in to find plug in answer to find final answer. Right? We had to take this x here. This wasn't the final answer, and we had to plug it in to get to our 118. So this was a lot. So let's move along, knowing now that we have really a lot of work to do. Really think these through. So let's look at this next question here. This is also from the chapter. One angle measures 9 more than 6 times the number. Now I think you're going to start figuring things out. You know, remember a number. 6 times the number. What are we going to think about when we think about a number that we don't know the value of? A sequence of rigid motions maps the angle onto another angle that is described as being 30 less than 9 times the number. Wow, what does this mean? A sequence of rigid motions. So I have an angle like this, and I have another angle like this. And what they're saying is that I can take a series of, if I can convert, you know, angle 1 to angle 2, if I call this angle 1 and I call this angle 2, with rigid motions, what does that mean? Right? What does it mean if I can transform this angle to this one using rigid motions? Think about that. Using rigid motions. In other words, I keep it fixed. I keep my angle fixed, and I just kind of, you know, I can translate it, or I can rotate it, or I can mirror it. Remember what happens using rigid motions. That means my angle measures are the same. Are the same. So all this is this is just a fancy way. This whole sentence number 2 is just kind of, or part of it is just a fancy way of saying the angles are equal. So I'm just going to measure these angles as equal. Okay, so now let's see where we can go. One angle measures 9 more than 6 times the number. Well, for those of you who are thinking, you're really doing some good job of thinking, remember a number is just a variable. Let's call it A this time. One measure measures 9 more than 6 times the number. So angle 1, the measure of angle 1 is equal to 9 more than 6 times the number. Well, that's 6 times the number, and that's 9 more. Angle 2, the measure of angle 2 is 30 less than 9 times the number. Well, 9 times the number, and then 30 less is minus 30. And we know that the angles are the same. So we do the same thing that we did on the last equation. We're going to set these equal, because I know that angle 1 and angle 2 are the same, because I got from one to the other using rigid motions. So let's say 6a plus 9 equals 9a minus 30. Well, let's do our algebra. We're going to subtract 6a from both sides, and we get 9 equals 3a minus 30. Get rid of the constant from the right, and we get 3a equals 39. Right? This was subtraction property of equality. This was the addition property of equality. And now I'm going to use the division property of equality and divide both sides by 3. And I get 13 equals a. Now, if I solve it, is this how big the angles are? And the answer is no, because the measure of angle 1 is 6 times A plus 9. If the measure of angle 1 is 6 times A, I have to say 6 times 13 plus 9, which is equal to 78 plus 9, which is equal to 87. And the measure of angle 2 is equal to 9 times 13 minus 30, or 117 minus 30, which is also equal to 87, which is good because they have to come out to the same number, or I know that my answer would be incorrect. Happy cat, happy cat, happy cat. Happy cat for setting it up. Happy cat for realizing that these angles must be the same measure from rigid motion. Happy cat for drawing the pictures. Happy cat for setting up the right equation. Lots of happy cats. A lot of work going on in this problem. Okay, well, let's take a pause and let's look at the last problem. Oops, no more happy cat. Okay, so the last problem, this is your homework. This is an exact homework problem, number 6. So I'm going to change it. So number 6, the homework that you're going to have to solve is 3 angles are described as follows. Angle B is half of angle A. Angle C is equal to 1 less than 2 times measure of angle B. And the sum of A and B is 114. Can these angles form a triangle? Why or why not? Well, I'm not going to do the homework for you. You have to do your own homework. So I can't do that. So I'm going to give you one like it. The angle B is 3 times the size of angle A. The measure of angle C is 10 more than twice the measure of angle B. The sum of the measures of A and B is 120. Can these angles form a triangle? Why or why not? So let's draw the pictures. Which one's the smallest? Well, B is 3 times A, so B is bigger than A. And then if B is bigger than A, C is 10 more than twice B. So C is the biggest. So let's do it like this. We're gonna draw a picture of angle A. Let's do it like this. We're gonna call this angle A, and then we're gonna make B be like we're gonna draw a bigger one, and then we're gonna draw C an even bigger one. Something like this. So a measure of angle, so let's call angle A. We don't know what any of these measures are, and there's nothing that says a number. So we can just say that angle A, the measure of angle A, we're just going to call that equal to x. So if that's x, and B is 3 times bigger than angle A, then I can say the measure of angle B is equal to what? Equal to 3x. It's 3 times bigger. So if x is 10, then 3x would be 30. And that would be consistent with what we say. Now I want you to pause and try this. Pause and try this problem. Now I assume you're back. And let's keep going. The measure of angle C is 10 more than twice the measure of angle B. So the measure of angle C is equal to 10 more. So if angle B is 3x, we're going to go 2 times angle B plus 10. See that? The measure of angle C is 2 times angle B plus 10. And angle B was 3x. So we got 2 times 3x plus 10, or 2 times 3x plus 10, which is equal to 6x plus 10. All right. Okay, so let's keep going. We've drawn out our 3 keys, our 3 angles. Now the sum of now we've used this and we've used this. So the sum of measures of angle A and B is 120. Here, let's write our 6x plus 10 here. So let's see. So angle A plus angle B is 120. So x plus 3x, measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B, is equals 120. So now we can go about solving for x. Well, we have 4x equals 120. That's combining like terms. Divide both sides by 4, and I get x equals 30. So I know that x is 30, and the measure of angle A is x, so this one's 30 degrees. Here, let's switch over here to red. So this one's 30, one's 30 degrees. And if B is 3x, then this one is now 3 times 30. 3 times 30, which equals 90 degrees. And I know that angle C is 6x. It's 2 times angle B. I can just think of it as 2 times angle B, which is 180 plus 10. Or I can just do my math like this, which is 2 times angle B, 2 times angle B plus 10 equals 2 times 90 is 180 plus 10. Or I could have, and that's 190. Or I could have just used this formula, as in 6 times 30 plus 10, which is also equal to 190. So this is a 190 degree angle, big angle. So now my question is can these three angles form a triangle? Why or why not? Well, let's look at it. What are the rules of a triangle? The rules of a triangle say that the angle 1 and angle 2 and angle 3, they sum to 180. So let's write our angles in. Well, angle first one is 30, the second one is 90, and the next one is 190. Well, I can already tell that it's not going to work out, but let's see. This is 120 and then 190, 0, 1, 310. So if I add these angles together, I get 310. So the answer is no. Why or why not? The answer is because the angles don't sum to 180. And I have all this work to support me. And I also have my happy cat who is meowing all over the place. So what you need to do on your homework is kind of run this same scheme that we did here, but with different numbers and different formulas and different equations and different expressions, and see if you can solve it. Good luck. Okay. Hopefully this was a useful exercise, a useful homework help, a couple example problems from today's lesson, and we'll see you next time with lesson 8 in 4, lesson 6. You're welcome.